Yeah. You see, guys, there's a lot of details that
I know.
that are behind
There's
the
a lot of
scenes.
details.
Well, we appreciate so much what you do and what you do. Like, there's
and I
a lot.
appreciate what you guys do.
Yeah.
Heck, you guys
I mean-
entertain me day in and
We
day out.
appreciate
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Bet on Her podcast, where we celebrate the incredible achievements and inspiring journeys of women who are making their mark in the world. Today, we have the pleasure of introducing you to an exceptional host and broadcast journalist, Camryn Irwin. Known for her captivating storytelling and unwavering dedication to bringing important stories to light, Camryn has become a powerhouse in the world of journalism. Join us as we explore her career, uncovering the challenges she's overcome, the pivotal moments that shaped her, and the incredible milestones she's achieved along the way. Get ready to be inspired by Camryn's resilience, tenacity, and unwavering belief in the power of her voice. This is Bet on Her, where we celebrate women breaking barriers and reshaping the future. We're your hosts, Gina, Kelly, and myself, Dana. And together, let's bet on Camryn.
welcome.
Cool. Wow, that was a good intro.
Yeah.
I seriously, can I hire you to write my stuff for me? I need you.
Just, honestly, I just need some time just to sit and think. I got back from Prague. Like I was on probably like an 18 to 20 hour journey from Prague to LAX. It was awful.
Your first FIVB event.
Yeah, first FIVB event, first international one in like forever.
What'd you think?
It was amazing.
Are you you've done some international stuff, or you're?
I actually have not done international before, apart from actually playing over there for a few years. But no, I haven't gotten a chance to call any FIVB. So maybe, hopefully, we'll see in the future. Who
Yeah, I
knows?
hope so too. But yeah, I guess obviously people know you as like this amazing sports broadcaster, but people don't know is that you've actually, like you said, played at a high level. Like you've played in the Pac-12 or the Pac-10, whatever it was at the time, and you played overseas, right? In Sweden and
Austria.
Austria, that's right.
Yeah.
Which is so cool. So like what, I guess kind of, I want to get into like, what was the inspiration behind getting into this profession?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've been a lifelong athlete. I started playing volleyball at about the age of 5. I had 2 older sisters that played volleyball, and I just grew up with sports molding me, whether that was on the field, on the hard court. I knew it was something that I wanted to pursue. I always dreamt of being a professional athlete, and I was very lucky to be a part of that very small collective, just as you both are as well. I worked as hard as I possibly could through both high school and college. And I also knew along the way that as much as sports molded my body, it also molded my character. And so I started to want to tell the stories and the experiences that had shaped my life and my character and who I am as a person. And I'm going, this is one of the best things that we can do in terms of becoming better people. And I wanted to inspire others by telling stories. And so from a very early point, it was about my freshman year of college, I knew I wanted to pursue not only becoming a professional athlete, but telling athlete stories. And so I started writing. I started working for the local newspaper. I started working I went to Oregon and then transferred to Washington State, and I started working for the athletic department. And I just said, you don't need to pay me. Like, can you give me somewhere to write something, to produce, to tell stories? And they were so wonderful to me. So by the time I finished up school, I had about 3 to 4 years of writing experience and producing experience, working with the athletes that I was actually either competing alongside or competing with. And so it was quick in terms of a transition for me, because little did I know that as soon as I'd start playing professional volleyball, it would be ripped from me. And all of a sudden now it's like, no, it's your time. You've been grooming yourself to tell stories. And so that's kind of the long, short journey into how I got into sports broadcasting.
So cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's great that you took the steps. And obviously, I know you had mentioned about your spinal injury, which is probably how the sport was ripped away from you. But tell us a little bit about that injury and kind of maybe what you might have gone through. Because I'm sure as an athlete, if you get injured and the sport is ripped away, like there's probably a little bit of an identity crisis to an extent.
No, there's definitely a little bit of that. There's no doubt about it. For me, it wasn't necessarily that the sport was ripped away from me. It was the fact that I felt like I was playing the best I had ever played. I had regained my confidence in the sport. I had regained who I was in the sport, who I was as a leader at the time that it was pulled away, which was my second professional season overseas. And I think so more than anything, I had to walk away at the pinnacle of my athleticism. And I will always wonder, like, could I have been more? Could I have done more on the court? But I also choose to not necessarily be ever the optimist, but I believe everything happens for a reason. And I had also been training for, we'll say 6 years at this point to become a broadcaster and a storyteller and to inspire people. And I knew that if that injury hadn't happened, I probably would have never walked away from my volleyball career. I'd probably still be playing to this day. Like, that's how much of a volleyball junkie I am and a competitor I am. And so I knew something had to kind of draw me that direction. And that was back in 2016. I started calling games for Pac-12 in 2016, 2017. And then the AVP called 2018, and it changed my life forever. So long short again is the fact that as much as the injury has changed my life, and I don't really get to play recreationally all that much anymore, jumping still hurts like nobody's business, I now get to do and follow another passion that I've really been pursuing since, I don't even know, 5 years old, really.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it sounds like it was a good transition and a good timing of it all too. Like you said, things happen for a reason, but
don't get me wrong, it was extremely difficult. I don't mean to make like absolute light of it. I thought, once I got hurt, I came back to the United States thinking, well, maybe I'll stay in the United States. Maybe I start training beach volleyball. I grew up in Washington State. Like, beach volleyball was not a thing where I grew up, but I was like, I'm determined. I want to keep competing. I want to play. And my body just gave out. I trained for like a full year down in San Diego, and I was coaching volleyball, and I got to the point where I was coaching and I like couldn't feel my legs. And I'm like, there's no way. Like, I have to stop. And so now the biggest blessing is like, I still get to be around the game. It is a labor of love, and it truly is love. I love this sport. I love the athletes. I hope that comes across every single day I'm on the mic. But yeah, I just want to continue to try and lift this sport up, because it's lifted me emotionally, physically, my character, who I am, from the very first time I started playing. Yeah, so.
What was your first gig as a broadcaster? So how did you how did you break into the field?
One of the best things was I actually started not only writing, but one of the first games I ever called was actually for my teammates. Like, I was at Washington State at the time, and they had asked me, like, of course, for free. It wasn't like I was getting paid, but they're like, hey, will you be an analyst for our live streaming matches at Washington State? And I had finished up my first pro season and had to go back to finish school. So I was like, sure, I'm around. Like, I'll get on the mic. And I was literally calling my teammates' matches, like these girls that I used to hang out with, like some of my best friends. That was a different level of like, okay, now I have to not only be critical and loving at the same time, but like I remember sitting up in the bleachers and everyone would laugh at me because I was like I would look like I was playing, like I was setting the ball and I'd attack the ball as I'm like talking. And I'm like so in it because I'm like, I literally was just training with them yesterday. So yeah. That was one of my first. And then Pac-12 opened the door to me as well. I think it was 2015 or 2016. I remember they gave me 5 games and I was like, which in context, like, how many games are in a season for college volleyball. And so 5 games in retrospect is very, very, very small, but it was like, oh my gosh, I will never forget the email coming through, and it had them 5 games slated, and I had my fees on there, and I knew the matchups, and I spent, so many hours prepping for those games. Like, I was getting ready to play them. Full scouting reports, volley data, like I was like all in.
So you do all of that yourself? You don't get somebody to hand you all of that data and that information?
Oh, no.
Wow.
So honestly, and up until this year, which only within the past 6 months, I'm covering pretty much 4 different leagues or tours, whatever you want to call them, or teams at once. And so I have, as of recently, hired a few helping hands just in terms of some of the research, because the problem is things are happening on every tour while I'm covering another one. So I have to deep dive into each one as I get closer to specific events. So a good example, I just came from pickleball this weekend, which was a PPA tournament. I have another PPA tournament this weekend. I have a Rams event on Thursday. So now I've got to go get ready for mini camp and OTAs. And then all of a sudden, the next thing I have is Major League Pickle, which is another like completely different organization. And not to mention then Hermosa's around the corner. So
Wow.
I've only recently had people that kind of help me build out some stats and some numbers just to kind of take off some of the research load. But up until this point, it has been all me.
Can I just say, I remember, I think it was maybe 2019, or were you were doing AVP 2019, right?
Yeah, 2018 was the first year.
Yeah, so 2019, I think I made a comment on my story. I was like, at Camryn, like, this is so great. I love the stats and the data and stuff. And you reposted it and I was so psyched. And I was like, oh my God. And like, here we are today. And I'm talking to you and I was just like wondering how you got that information, just all of the stats, and you're just doing it all yourself up until now.
Yeah. So
that's wild.
There are some great people. We have a statistician at AVP that provides great numbers. Doug Strauss is his name. He's great.
Yeah, BVB info.
BVB info.
Nice.
That stuff is
I
legit.
live and die by that stuff. But then I also learned like as much as there are stats, there's so few in beach volleyball still, right? Like it's starting to come in more and more, which is great, but it's not really being collected and distributed. We'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest thing I remember, like 2018 and 2019, was like, I just have to get to know these athletes.
Yeah.
And so some of those stats, maybe they came from them too, or I would ask somebody like Gina, hey, Gina, like clearly you've been working on your serve. You rip and jump serves like a wild woman, right? What have you been working on? And so then if she said, hey, I've really been working on, my top spin, cut to the right side or left side or whatever it would be, then it'd be like, okay, that's as a starting point. And then I would go back and try. I'd actually watch. I would spend so many hours. I would go back and watch matches too and try and figure out how I could like quantify, because there were no stats. Like, how has her serve improved? Are there numbers? How many points are they scoring? So some of that happened just because I was a volleyball player too. Like, I was intrigued myself.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely sounds like a really intense process, but also it shows that you're good at what you do, and like it shows. And like I think I've like always valued the effort and that you put in, because it's we can tell that you do. So we appreciate that. Yeah, a lot.
I wasn't the most naturally talented at broadcasting, and I also knew, because I didn't come from a beach volleyball background, I'll be honest, I knew that if I was supposed to speak in terms of being an expert or have a great understanding, it was like, well, I might as well, as I learn, I might as well educate the audience as I go too. And so especially in those early years, like I was a pro volleyball player, but I wasn't a pro beach volleyball player. And there was a lot of learning, and it was painful those first 2 years, just in terms of me wanting to put out the best possible product for you guys. And it was definitely a lot of hours. It was a little painstaking. It was a lot of learning, and it was a lot of failure all wrapped up into one. But ultimately, you just got to keep your nose down and keep grinding. And I think I've gotten to at least a decent place now.
Take us through like that learning process, like your first years on the AVP broadcasting.
Yeah.
What is it that you learned from that, and how have you grown as a broadcaster and where you are today?
Yeah, you know what? I think some of the biggest lessons I've learned in the past, we'll say 6 or so years, have been thanks to the amazing people I've gotten to work alongside. That first year, 2018, I've told the story before, but I never thought I was going to be a play-by-play, which if you're new to sports broadcasting, you have the analyst or the color commentary, that's the expert. And you have the play-by-play, who is the person that sets the scene. They are the ones talking over the point, and the analyst or color commentator is the one explaining the why. Why did it happen? I'd always been the why, right? Because I played volleyball for 20 years. It made sense for me to be the why. I knew I wanted to host, but play-by-play, like, that was something I had never considered until 2018. And Amazon came to me the night before Austin, and Kevin Barnett sitting next to me, and I'm sitting there like just getting ready for who knows what's about to happen for 10 hours of a worldwide broadcast, for the first one ever on Amazon Prime. And they're like, yeah, you're going to call play-by-play for some matches. And I'm like, I had been working in broadcast. I'm like, play-by-play, like, how do I do that? I literally didn't sleep that night. I was Googling, like, on YouTube, trying to figure out, like, how do I, like, bring an audience into a broadcast? What is play-by-play? How do I kick to break? How do I, like, these are things I had never done in 2018, where I was always the person sitting there just, like, getting to talk, and the other person ran the show. And so 2018 not only was I learning beach volleyball at the highest levels, I was learning how to do play-by-play at the highest levels. And so it was extremely difficult. I did not sleep in 2018. I was getting like 4 hours sleep a night at those events. And the funny one for AVP is that by the time you get to Sunday, that's like when I need to be at my best is like Sunday, right? Like it's the championships, you got to give it everything you got. But by Sunday, you're like completely drained. I may be on like 10 hours of sleep on those 3 or 4 days. And I'm like, this is what real broadcasting feels like. But yeah, I was lucky enough to work next to Kevin Barnett. I learned how to, write from Kevin Barnett. I learned how to build opens. There's just so much that went on behind the scenes. Like I remember we'd wake up early and I'd get ready for the show, and we'd always sit and have coffee at the hotel or something like that. And he would sit there and we'd come up with like, how are we going to get on air? And that's something like, now that I'm in the industry, I realize that doesn't really happen that often, where I like sit with a co-host or sit with somebody just because there's so much going on. But like he took the time to sit down to write the best open. Like I owe so much to Kevin Barnett. I really do. And I know it sounds funny, and I know he has, a specific taste, but just like Kevin, there are others. Geeter, I learned to listen to Geeter in terms of his creativity and how he can storytell in like 60 seconds. I look around still, even now, like Chris Berman, and how joyful and excitable he is. Like there are so many great broadcasters that I now like look to, and not to say try and emulate, but I try and pull some of those qualities into my own broadcasting.
Well, as a fan, you could never tell that you were under this much pressure.
Yeah, you
Like-
held it well together.
Like held it really well together.
Yeah.
Well, they made it easy. I also had fun. I loved what I did. So even though I was like under that much pressure, that was the other good thing with like both Kevin and Dane now is like, it's so fun to work with them that like they taught me as much as you can like be in your numbers and be in your stats and know every detail. Just be an athlete. Like love what you do, love the action, and like get the audience to love that. That's the most important thing. You could know everything in the world, but like your job is to entertain and inspire through the action that's being done on the court. And so those are some of the biggest lessons I learned 2018 through now.
Nice.
6 years.
Yeah, that's really cool, and it's nice to have such good inspiration and people to work with, emulate all that. What about like your role and like the balance that you have to do in order to create this unbiased, fair coverage of it all? Because I know there's probably like.
I would be like, let's go, Kelly, let's go, Gina. Who are they playing against? I don't know. Doesn't matter. I just really care about these two.
You had us in the booth. When was it?
Seattle.
Seattle. That must have been 2018.
Yeah.
We had no idea what we were doing, but
It's like, you guys crushed it.
who knows? Our ratings might have been bad for that match, but like I think we were a little buzzed at that point. I'll be honest.
Beers in.
We had a couple
I think
beers
you
in.
guys literally had margaritas in your hand while we were sitting there.
We were knocked
I did
out.
not, just as you, but they did.
Yeah, we were in the beer bracket at that point, and then we came up and we had like a fun show.
Yeah, that was with you. It was really fun.
We don't know if it was any good, but
Yeah.
Oh no, I remember just sitting there and I was like, this is the greatest thing ever, because I didn't even have to say anything. You started calling play-by-play. Like
It's-
most
Kelly
people,
kept so
I was just
natural.
running my mouth. I didn't know what I was saying.
crazy is most people get up there and they're like just talking the volleyball. You like went full play-by-play mode. I remember it vividly, and you just like, I was like, this is great. I'm getting paid to just watch this now. This is
Just
wonderful.
rest up for the next one for Championship Sunday. I got you. I'll save you.
It was great.
Oh, it's so funny.
But to answer your question,
Yeah.
I think some of the, I have to figure out how I want to say this. We all have certain tendencies, right? That we lean certain ways, or, I was an athlete. There are certain styles of play that I love to watch. But I think one of the greatest things in early phases of Amazon and AVP, and as those relationships continue to grow, was recognizing that as much as I now see, as much as I now know, I also want the best for the athletes out on the court. And so in order to provide whatever's best for you guys in terms of whether it's marketing, whether it's branding, whether it could even be competitively, like one of the biggest pieces that comes to mind is scouting reports. Like I now start to see things. I'm not saying I don't have your guys' mind in terms of beach volleyball, but I do start to see things, and I recognize nuances in your game because I've literally called matches for 6 years, and I've watched it over and over and over again. And so, or I maybe go up to an athlete before a match and say, hey, what are you gonna try and exploit here? What are the weaknesses? What might be the game plan? And all of that to me is like IP, it's intellectual property, right? And I have to be very careful with what is given to me and what I know and how it is delivered. And when it is delivered, it is a full puzzle doing play-by-play and knowing when to utilize information, when to maybe hold back on information. And it all comes down to wanting what's best for the athletes, right? I want to represent you in your best form because your best form is what most inspires the next generation. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question,
No,
but
definitely.
it is definitely it's definitely a balancing act in terms of knowing things and making sure that the product is also growing, that the best representation of everyone is shown to a worldwide audience.
So I'm going to call you for my scouting reports now. Perfect.
What do you see from up top?
Yeah,
What
seriously.
calls are they doing?
And you know, I feel like there's probably also an art that you have to find with communicating the sport in a way that's still captivating for people who are like avid volleyball or whatever sport it may be, but then also you have to still make it
Entertaining.
Entertaining, but
And
what I'm getting
tangible to a less educated audience on the
exactly,
sport.
yeah, like people who are tuning in who've maybe never seen the sport. Like there's definitely, that's probably got to be challenging too, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I mean, it's great because I had to learn that with volleyball. As much as I knew, I also understood that I would have people tune in on a regular basis, and maybe it was your grandma, or maybe it was, your cousin that had never seen volleyball before. What I quickly learned is like I don't want to say the majority of the audience is that, but I would say it's a pretty good split, more so than what you would think. You just don't ever hear from those people. You don't hear those people online. They may not interact or engage as, an avid volleyball fan or pickleball or even football fan. But there are so many more eyes and ears than you even realize are taking in the sport. And so I quickly learned, my mom always would say it to me, just imagine like you're teaching grandma, like my job is to bring new people into the sport. So if I don't say like, hey, we're playing, whether it's best 2 of 3, we're playing to 21, or with even pickleball now, like games are to 11, it takes 10 seconds. I don't mean to like dilute the sport, but it welcomes new viewers in and helps them understand. So I try now, it's like I'm telling a story with even a live broadcast. I start with, not to say watered down, but the general pieces of information. And then I start to educate the audience as to the players and who you are, what are your backgrounds. How can I start to, do the match while also educating them? Like, you went to UCLA, you went to USC, you were the first scholarship beach volleyball player in the country. Like I played against Kelly in college. Like there's so many things.
She knows still.
I know, she's got this down.
Oh my
Done her
God.
homework.
Yes, for years. But it definitely becomes an art form in terms of then by the end, you hope to tell a story, whether it's a scouting report unfolding or maybe not unfolding the way you thought it might. But it's all about a start point and a finish point.
How do you deal with criticism from like viewers? Like, I mean, how do you get feedback? How do you know that you're doing a good job? Obviously.
Twitter.
Well, yeah, but like, do you look at that
Block out
stuff?
the
Do you-
haters.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how do you block out the haters? But with 2 spoons.
No, seriously.
Anyway,
Cue that vine.
I will.
have you seen that Vine? Oh my gosh, it's the best.
Blocking out the haters.
Anyways, but yeah, how do you deal with criticism in your industry?
Well, I'd be a fool to say that you don't look at some of it, because at the same time, that's your audience. Now, that's not your whole audience. You're not going to hear the good stuff most of the time. Sometimes you do, and that's when you like relish in those moments of you get a nice tweet your direction, or somebody saying like, I really enjoyed the broadcast, when they run into you. But most of the noise is going to be somewhat negative. I remember the first few years, it ate me alive. And I don't want to admit that, because no one wants to admit that something got to them. But I will say, thank you. It did get to me, and it pushed me, and it made me be better. I was a competitor, and I was pissed when people wanted to write that I didn't know what I was talking about, or that I was just the blonde girl up there. Thank you. Because I might have quit at one point or another, just based off of what I was seeing. But I just kept going. I put my nose down. I did the only thing I knew how to do, which was work, not sleep, grind, get to know you guys, and then love what I do. And I had friends that were mentors that told me to get my nose out of, I don't even want to mention the source. You all know what it is. Yeah. I mean, I kid. Love you, Volley Talk. I've got some.
That's the worst website of all time.
And you know what's funny is I don't look now. Yeah. But in the beginnings, I was like, whew. I will never forget. They called me. It was, I don't know if I should share this, just to give them credit. Yeah. It was Barney and the Bimbo.
That was their name. That was what
name? That's what people called me and Kevin Barnett, Barney and the Bimbo. And I was like, okay, bring it on. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's been my whole athletic career, and even broadcasting career is like people telling me I wasn't good enough, or I couldn't do something. And
you took a bet on yourself.
Yeah, it just.
Ooh, that was sneaky.
I took a bet on myself and my work ethic.
Yeah.
And
that's amazing. And I think what's also really admirable is you've established yourself as like more or less the face of the LA Rams, which is a very male dominated industry too. And I just want to say, I think it's so cool that you're doing that. But also want to hear more about like the journey to get there, and then kind of probably some obstacles that you came across along the way.
Yeah. The Rams was an incredible opportunity. I mean, I came on 2 years ago, about to go into my third year. And the first year I'm there, it's like it's Amazon 2018 all over again. They look at me and go, okay, well, we're going to use you as like a host, but we're also going to use you like you're going to be hosting game days, which means instead of talking to a camera and having no interaction back, I'm now talking live to 73,000 people.
Wow.
So and
talk about pressure. Yeah. And it's football. I mean,
I know. To be a woman talking about football too.
Yeah, to 73,000 people that do what you ask them to do, which is even more terrifying. I'm like, whose house? Ram's house. Like, I'm the one that has to figure out when and how to say that, and are they going to respond? Same thing. It was literally Austin all over again. The night before, this might be too much information, but I remember I was in a hotel in Los Angeles, and I had written my scripts, and I had figured it out, and I knew I was gonna ad-lib a lot of it. But I remember I went to bed, had showered, so because I have like 5 a.m. call time, I had done my hair. I woke up and I didn't really sleep. Like, I had sweat. I threw my entire pajamas. I was so nervous. I didn't even know it. I was in and out of consciousness all night long. And I had to re-shower and fully get ready again that morning. And that had never happened to me. Like, the nerves, the anxiety, and I just knew as soon as I got there, there was no one else to fill in for me. At that point, I didn't have Kirsten Watson, my co-host. There was nobody. So it was you're handed a mic for the first time. You've never heard yourself in a stadium like that. And everyone's looking at you. And it was terrifying.
So in that situation, are you trying to be on script, or do you have to go, what is it called, improvise?
Or what's your self-talk there?
Yeah.
Ooh, good question. So it's funny. I love to dance. It's one of my kind of things I do before I go on air. And I remember luckily we have a phenomenal DJ with the Rams, DJ Malski, and he is of course pumping the jams as the doors are opening. And I'm like, just trying to get in the zone of like, who are you? Like, what do you love? Who do you love? And that's easy. I love sport. I love people. I love community, and I love football. And all those things are right in front of me. And I knew that all I had to do is, if I'm having fun and I'm joyful, it doesn't really matter. I don't want to say it doesn't matter what I say in this situation, but like, my job is to make you have the best possible time in that position and to love the same things that I do. So I remember I had like scripted everything because it was a new role. So I was very, you know, like overly prepared.
Very green.
Very green.
Yeah.
And I had been broadcasting for 6 years or 5 years, whatever it had been. And I remember walking up to this, I do a pregame show, and walking up to the stage, and I was dancing, trying to stay loose, just trying to be joyful. And I just realized you pick a couple kids out of the crowd in front of you, and you pick a couple community members and season ticket members, and you see the smile on their face, you welcome them, you greet them, you have a blast. And I remember it was more of like a performance in that sense, because I had in my head memorized because I'd gone over it so many times. But now it's completely different. Year 3, I'm like, okay, I've got my 3 nuggets that I want to like get out to the audience. And now I get to ad lib way more. You know, at the end of season 1 is pretty much when I got to get away from like super structured and, you know, getting through points A, B, and C and trying to be perfect. And now it's like, have fun. Like, you get to get away from the script. You prepare just as hard, but now it's become so much more natural. Just like the AVP. Like, I don't have to do 12 binders anymore. It's great. It's really nice.
One for every player and then some.
Oh, yeah. I still have them.
Wow.
They literally, I was just cleaning out my closets this morning and I found my like AVP binders.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
You should keep those.
They're, yeah. They should end up in Holyoke.
They probably have secrets about everybody.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Scouting reports.
There's a little some of that. There is like I always got nervous when sometimes you guys would come up, or not just you guys, any athletes, because I'm like, I would write things as reminders to myself, like they struggled in this match with their passing, you know, and it was like in my notes, and I'm like covering up, trying to hide it. Don't worry, I swear the scouting report goes good. There's good things in there too.
Well, I think it's really cool because I think that you are paving the way for a lot of women in football. And we had on recently my good friend from high school and college, Farron Benjamin. She's an NFL agent now.
Yeah.
Which is great. But she was talking about kind of like the demographics of the sport and how there's more women, but like there still could be even more. So.
Yes. Yeah, and I think one of the biggest elements too is, as much as my job with the Rams during game days is to bring joy, a lot of the other content I do is educational, right? Where I'm sitting down with Sean or one of our players, or even some of our hosts and other analysts to kind of break down the X's and O's. And I think for me, the biggest thing when I go into situations like that is I want more women in those positions. And what I want most is what I feel in that moment, which is that I'm well prepared, I'm ready, and I am capable. And that comes with preparation, it comes with experience, it comes with practice. And the more that I can put out a solid product that displays that not only can we be there, but we belong to be there. And I think that is one of the biggest elements with some of the stuff I now do with the Rams. And they have been phenomenal, like, to work with from top to bottom as an organization. They celebrate women day in and day out there. We have literally even up to the front office, like there are women scattered across that organization. And so it's so fun to be a part of that place and to be celebrated in that place. And they, every single day make me feel like I'm really part of that team. It's been really fun to be a part of.
That's so cool.
Can we get Rams tickets?
I do get two.
Yeah, we'll go. It's at SoFi. SoFi is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Have you guys been?
It's
Yes,
like-
you
it's
guys
a
did the event
whole-
there.
I haven't been there.
Oh, okay.
I've been there twice. It's like an event. Like,
Oh yeah.
you don't even watch the game football. You're like watching the Jumbotron.
You watch the screen.
You get distracted by everything but the game. You forget that they score touchdowns. It's like, oh,
Oh yeah,
But it's so fun. I recommend anyone going if you have the opportunity to go. Like,
Yeah.
it's such a fun event. It's absolutely beautiful. Like, it is the future. Like, it's so architectural. Like, it's like out of this world.
Yeah.
It's so
I've
cool.
never been, so I should
We'll
go.
have to go.
Yeah.
We'll have to go.
Yeah, you got to go check out the infinity screen. I know far too much about that stadium now. From the 5-acre lake out front to the 80,000 pixels in the infinity screen. It is pretty phenomenal.
Oh.
You're just
It's
full of
wild.
knowledge.
I know.
Yeah. It just,
Absorbs
Spews
it all.
out of you.
Yeah.
I always say this because it's always funny and my mother appreciates it. I was quite the talker as a child. It's no surprise. My mother was like, you will literally never shut up. And I was like, well, let me show you. I will get paid for it someday.
Look at me now.
Look at me now.
Play to our strengths, right? That's
Exactly.
awesome.
I just never stop talking.
Yeah.
I love it.
I guess like I want to ask like what are your opinions on some trends or changes that have happened in sports broadcasting or like in the sports industry in general? Because I feel like talking about this jumbotron and the digital aspect of it all, I feel like that's a huge thing too.
Yeah, I think the intersection of technology and sport is always intriguing. Even through the landscape now, we talk about 2018 with the Amazon, and now the fact that the NFL, Thursday Night Football, belongs to them. Like, what's wild is the AVP, this is from at least my perspective, was the testing ground. That was the first worldwide broadcast that they had ever done, was the AVP in 2018. That they produced were a big part of alongside Echo Entertainment. And it's crazy to see how much has now gone streaming, whether it's, ESPN Plus or Hulu doing sports or Amazon Prime. Linear networks are now trying to figure out their own way to get almost to that streaming scope. So I think it would be obviously the number one thing is so much of sports and coverage is going to the digital landscape, which is great, but there's been a learning curve since about that 2018 mark where there's been significant changes. There will always, in my opinion, be those linear networks just because you have so many different types of generations that are tuning in. You're still going to have those big TV contract deals because that's really what pushes those leagues along in terms of finances and viewership. I mean, Super Bowl still, the numbers are astronomical, right? So that's one of the trends that you've seen just since, that 2018 mark. And some of the other ones, I think they're just within the past even 2 years and 3 years really is authenticity coming back in like full force. And you're starting to see more personalities and you're starting to see more diversity and you're starting to see more stories being told from different viewpoints. And I love it. I think it's wonderful because as much as we have different athletes from different backgrounds and circumstances, like that's what's out on the field and the court and the sand. We also are getting now more opportunities to represent those athletes from also varied viewpoints. And that's one of the biggest elements, I think, is the authenticity of who we are is coming across more in the sports world.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think that kind of coincides. The authenticity thing is one thing I think is important for as athletes working with brands or partnerships and stuff like that is because I feel like the industry with all these influencers and all these, it's just becoming so diluted that now it's like these micro influencers and these people who are still staying true to themselves is like, that's where it's super, like, I mean, I think they're making that way more important, which I think is good.
Yeah, I mean, it's targeted marketing, right?
Yeah.
And it works. So it doesn't matter if you have, whether it's, 1,700 followers or 100 followers. If your 100 followers are beach volleyball fans that will do in whatever you want them to do, like that's way more of a level of engagement that you're looking for. So I fully try and push as many people as I can that I talk to, whether it's athletes in the volleyball space or the pickleball space, or even just collegiate athletes in general, like take an assessment of yourself, right? Understand, like, what are my core values? What are my core pillars? Ask yourself to put in a box of 5, right? So like, what are these 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 things that I really had to boil myself down, what are they? And then start looking for brands and companies and people that value, they don't have to match those things, but do they value those things? And if they do, your audience obviously loves you and is going to come alongside. So as long as all of those things start to match, it really doesn't matter how many people you have, because your community is growing, and it's it's a genuine community. And ultimately, even sponsorships, like that's how you can make it happen, right? And you guys know as much as anybody how challenging that can be to build that community. But you've got to ask yourself, what are those 5 things? I even just had to do a reassessment of myself as a brand, as a broadcaster. And I was like, oh, I wish I had done this 5 years ago. I should have done this 5 years ago.
I do want to say something, though, that was really fascinating to me that I even never thought about, which was you were talking about each individual just sort of rebranding. But then part of your job, which I never realized, was also helping these athletes brand themselves by the way that you announce and talk about them. That's fascinating because you're also representing them. You're representing yourself, you're representing them, and you're giving these athletes an opportunity to showcase their work, their athleticism, but also their personalities.
And that's not something to be taken lightly. Like, you hit on something that is probably the greatest honor of my job, is that I am an arm to the athletes. I am a spokesperson to the athletes. And I've known that from day one. And that's why I put so much pressure on myself.
Yeah.
Because they can't speak for themselves on the court. Your play can speak for yourselves, how you compete and how you work with your team and all those things. Those can speak volumes. But until I can eloquently and appropriately put that into verbiage, that's a huge responsibility. And it is an honor. But the more you guys put out, that I can better tell your stories. Like, for instance, this podcast, I was thrilled when this came up because I was like, let's go. There's going to be so much great content coming out of it. You're going to let people know who you are. That's going to bring in more eyeballs and more sponsorship and bigger audience. And you're going to inspire people. Like, those things all combined, it's just so incredible. So I very strongly encourage all of the athletes. I'm like, get on social media, even if it's just like your workout. Because if I see you in the USA gym and you're doing, 3 sets of 50 with whatever, I'm like, I can talk about that on air. Like, it's great.
Yeah. The reason why it resonates with me specifically is because that's when I'm doing video content for athletes, I am representing them. And so what I put out there, for me as a perfectionist, needs to be perfect, right? That it goes down, like, it comes down from the way I shoot it. It has to be intention behind the frames and how I'm shooting it, the angles, but also the music. Athletes don't know that. They don't see what goes on, but you are an extension of who they are. And I mean, they use those sound bites. Like, I used those sound bites. I've used it in some of my videos. One that I did of Betsy, actually. But yeah, those sound bites are used for videos for brands.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I think that's also just in terms of something cool of my job is, like, I never imagined becoming a play-by-play. I am very grateful. There are very few females, not only in the industry, but who call play-by-play.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think is so fun is that I now get to voice some of the memories and some of the big pieces of sports history. And that's the second honor of what I get to do. And so it's definitely like those final points of matches and the championship matches and the amount of time you spend in terms of the delivery, the tonality, the actual verbiage you use, leaving space, when to talk, when not to talk. And it is one of the coolest parts of my job, is getting to hear it kind of all come to life and really bring your guys' stories to life.
Yeah. You see, guys, there's a lot of details that
I know.
that are behind
a lot
the
of
scenes.
details.
Well, we appreciate so much what you do and what you do. Like, there's
and I
a lot.
appreciate what you guys do.
Yeah.
Heck, you guys
I mean,
entertain me day in and day out.
No, Camryn, you put a lot into your job, and I mean, you do a fantastic job. So Thank you for
Thanks.
taking time to
Yeah.
be here to discuss and to chat. We haven't seen you in a while, so this
I
was
know.
nice to catch
Well,
up.
Well, I want to, before we close out, I want to talk about pickleball real quick. Because come on, like
We love pickleball.
Yeah.
We're
I played
very
with you
novice.
guys.
I know.
we played with her one time.
What's the scouting report against us?
Great defense, great in the transition zone because, you know, you're great with the hands from volleyball. You can dig a ball out. You were actually very calculated. Clearly you had some training, but I was fully expecting you guys to like rip, you know, just like swing at balls and be as aggressive as possible. But you guys were very calculated. Like you were trying to stick to
Our
the
dink game.
structure of the
dink
game.
You gotta
Yeah.
go dink, 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 firefight, body shot.
Wow, I'm just like go hard every single time.
That's the right terminology, I think.
Oh, it is. That's why you should call play-by-play. We're back to killing
Sign
play-by-play.
me up. I'm ready. Mic me up. I will do it.
Oh, well, Camryn's really good, and she took it easy on us. But like, you get to, when you go in to commentate some of these PPA tournaments
Yeah.
and other events, you get to be like practice bodies for
Yeah,
right?
from time to time. I'm like the cannon fodder, right? It's been really fun because I found pickleball because of actually my spinal injury. I was looking for some activity and I couldn't jump anymore. I can't really jump anymore. And I started playing pickleball, and next thing you know, I like found my competitive energy, my competitive fire again that had been hidden for so many years, and I was thrilled. So I just dove straight in because it was something I could do. And next thing you know, I'm like calling pickleball tournaments, and I was playing every single day, and now I'm talking so much that I don't get to play as much. So that's the hard part. But I do get to play, you know, at times alongside some of these pros. And what's so fun is 2 years ago when I got into it, so many of my friends are now at the professional ranks. They like went fully into it, training twice a day, just like volleyball. There's so many similarities to the volleyball world. But now it's so fun because I get to call all of the matches, just like when I competed against Kelly in college and I got to call Kelly's matches. Now all of my friends are playing professionally. So it's been
That's cool. Yeah.
It's hard not to have rooting interest. I'm not going to lie,
Yeah.
but I try and do my best.
Well, we might quit beach volleyball and we might go pro pickle.
I like
We're
it.
thinking about it.
Yeah.
I have a question. Are you a visual learner?
Yes, but I'm also, I don't know what it's called when like, not only do I have to visualize it, I actually have to perform it. So
Yeah.
like with pickleball,
yeah.
that's what's so fun. And I think
That's
it
why
helped.
you're probably so good. She's watching it all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
she's
watching
studying
it
the game,
and I
always.
play it. So now I understand like I'll see maybe your arm motion compared to yours, and we'll say a volleyball arm swing. And I actually can see it pretty well just because I've coached a lot too. And just like in pickleball, now that I've played with some really high level players and I had to learn the sport, that allows me to connect to so many audiences just because I learned, you know, I had to first learn how to hold the paddle. Then I had to learn how to find a forehand speed up off a bounce, cross court, cross body to be able to execute your triangle off it. Like I had to go through each of those phases, just like in the game of volleyball. And same thing in the game of pickleball to be able to best.
It's cool because you are a part of like, I mean, beach volleyball at the collegiate level at least, and then pickleball at the pro level is two of the fastest growing emerging sports right now in the U.S. And you're a huge part of that, which is very cool. And I guess one last question I want to ask is like, what do you think is the future of pickleball?
Oh, goodness. I don't think anyone knows yet. I think there are so many investors coming into the sport, so many other athletes that love it. Whether you're an athlete, a country music artist, an NFL quarterback, Dude Perfect just bought a team. Like there's so many investors coming in that it's hard to say if it will top out or when it will top out. I hope it doesn't. They'd love for it to be an Olympic sport, which would be very interesting. It has to grow globally for that to be the case. But I also would love to see some of those like investors. Let's bring them on over to the volleyball scene.
Let's have like
Come on
dual
over, guys.
tournaments. Like you got pickleball courts over here, you got beach volleyball courts over here, and then you do both sports.
Yeah,
you play both. It'd be fun.
I'm all in.
It's just like you could bring what's the other one? Tech volley. You can make it like a fun festival.
Could be something.
I'm just gonna buy a team.
There you go.
I'm gonna start a volleyball league, and then I'm gonna start.
There's a few of those coming up though in the US.
I know the pro ones.
Yeah,
the
it's
indoor.
exciting to see.
Yeah.
I know. I'm like,
Carrie
where were
Walsh.
these like 7 years ago?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I wouldn't have been able to jump in either.
You guys have anything else to add?
No, that was great.
No.
Just that I want to play. We want to go to a pickleball tournament.
I know.
Yeah,
we wanna go- we
yeah.
wanna go
How do we
Rams
get
game.
tickets? San Clemente is this weekend.
Yeah, San Clemente is coming up. There's actually 2. So we have a PPA and then an MLP coming up. 2 different formats, both just freaking wild. It is a part. By the way, this past weekend, I will say, when people think pickleball is for old people, it is, but it's also the young generation coming up. Like, I step on with 10-year-old court on the court with 10-year-olds, and they crush me, and it is demoralizing. I will say though, SMU just brought out they rented a party bus, a frat rented a party bus, showed up at the event last weekend. It was so rowdy. It was like AVP of old, like they're lit, the crowd is on fire, everyone's screaming. You can't even, like, you're supposed to not talk during pickleball points. We can't even quiet them down enough to like get to the, like, I'm just saying, we got it. It's not just for young people. Or for old people. It's for young people coming on in. It's a party.
Sign me
A party.
up.
Do you trash talk?
Oh, see, I'm supposed to be like this, like nice.
Yeah,
No,
I know.
I am not. I am very competitive, and I wouldn't say I wouldn't say I trash talk, but I can definitely chip with the best of them. Let's put it that way. If you come at me, like, you better watch out. And I'm an emotional player, so if you start playing a style, there's no doubt I'm gonna bring the fire right back at you.
Man, that's so. I want to see that.
Oh, I don't think anybody wants to see that. I don't even want to see that.
Dana wants to see it. Dana, like the first time she played pickleball was at Kelly's birthday a month
Oh,
back.
It was the best,
Kelly-
best thing ever that I did.
know,
Seeing
right?
Dana. Things were heated. I'm like, this is a birthday
Oh.
party.
Oh, now I want to put you on the other side of the
Well,
court.
Yeah.
that's because I'm Romanian. I speak another language, so when I'm scolding, it's in another language.
Oh, this
And
is even better.
You like understand sort of a little bit of it.
Weirdly, yes.
Yeah, and like I'll say stuff, and then I'll walk over to you two when we were playing against you guys, and I was like, "You guys are gonna get f***ed up." You remember that?
And we beat you 11-1.
You beat us, but we're getting better. Although that was my first time ever playing pickleball,
Yeah, you guys were good.
True.
First time, yeah.
and I'm very good at ping pong
Oh,
and-
that helps.
and tennis. And I
Translates.
That
play,
definitely
and I
translates.
play some tennis.
Oh, then you're solid.
Yeah,
You
I'm
got
an
it all.
athlete. I'm an athlete.
I will say too, it's been fun with pickleball because they're still learning about their own sport. Like, not only just the strategy and how much like the tech and the strategy has grown in the last few years, but like, what are the right ways to like engage with the opponent, the audience? When do you talk? When do you not talk? Like, there is so much education happening right now in the sport that every week it's like there's some new big storyline that you're like,
Which brings me a question. Sorry.
this is great.
What is the call of like the aggressive steps towards the kitchen or something? That is the.
So it's like in golf, you can call it like a distraction or a hindrance. So imagine that you're talking or you say something right in the middle of somebody's backswing, and it's the same thing. So it's weird because it wants to be a mixture of tennis etiquette. So you can imagine how quiet, like you can talk in between, but like the chair umpire like drops everything down.
Right.
And volleyball, where it's just like incessant noise and cheering and harassment, which we love about the game of volleyball, but it's trying to combine the two of those things. So there is truly like, what is the pickleball etiquette per se? And of course you want it to be fun. So that definitely is now, that's why I brought up the SMU thing, because it's definitely getting rowdy, but there still needs to be this level of, you can't really talk in someone's backswing, like in pickleball or tennis, golf, because it is distracting. Like I was calling the matches and it got so loud, like I started to get super anxious in the point because I don't even talk over the point in pickleball. I'm not even on the court. I am somewhere on site calling it, but I don't speak. And so when I start hearing people, I'm like, I start to get anxious. It drifts my focus. And I'm like, imagine being an athlete and all of a sudden my focus is drifting. So I'm like, get rowdy, talk in between points, get wild before and after matches. But then there's like the in between.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but that's the hindrance or distraction call. You can't run at somebody and like,
Yeah.
That's so interesting. We sometimes play with our friend Nikki Jade and her mom Kim Jade, who's a
I'm good
professional.
friends with them.
Yeah, she's and she was talking about how pro pickleball players are still learning the how to use wind.
Yeah.
Like what's with beach volleyball, there's that variable and that element where like you want the wind kind of in your face, but like in pickleball, Nikki was saying like you kind of want it at your back almost. Like I'm like, that's so backwards for me, but yeah, there's so many variables that I'm sure that
Well,
athletes
and
around.
if pickleball players listen to this podcast, they're probably not going to like me for this because volleyball has ruined me because beach volleyball, because I'm like, heck, you guys play with differing sands, different grains, how it moves, the depth, the wind, the sun. You play in the rain. For heaven's sakes, even in New Orleans, you guys played through a freaking hurricane.
Oh yeah.
That was insane.
Yeah.
But pickleball, like their balls like change and based off of the temperature in terms of like, is it hard? Is it soft? Is there other wind conditions? There's even different. So like, you know, it'd be like the FIVB ball versus the AVP ball. They're even different. They're made of different things. And depending on wind direction, all of those things, the game changes. And there's been a lot of conversation that like this needs to be an indoor sport and that it needs to be played with the same conditions. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, no, like I love the variables because I'm going,
Totally.
you are forcing your athletes to separate themselves, to train harder, to train in different conditions. And that's what I love about volleyball is you have different styles that work better in different environments. That's becoming true in pickleball. Why would I want to take that out of the game? Like
Yeah.
it's so fun to get to see different athletes have success because they're really good at this one skill and in this condition.
Yeah.
And
It's like
Why would
pro
you take that
tennis,
out?
like playing on clay versus
yeah.
whatever.
Grass.
Yeah.
Hard court.
Yeah. So I go against, I think, most people in
Yeah.
terms of,
I
I
agree.
think pickleball should still be
That's fair.
including the variables.
Yeah.
It makes it more challenging.
I'm gonna practice probably pickleball maybe today. Wake,
We're
wake
going right after
myself,
this.
wake myself up because it's actually it's a 9-hour difference from here to Prague.
I was going to say, have you slept?
No,
I'm so sorry.
I went to bed at 3 a.m. Woke up at 8. Had some coffee. I'm golden.
Well, the good news is I never stopped talking, so this is good.
This has been really I love the engagement. Okay, we're gonna end it with this. You ready?
Okay, go.
It is how do you take a bet on yourself, or how have you taken a bet on yourself?
Doing what terrifies me most, but trusting myself that if I have fun, then everyone else around me will.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's
Love
like a
that.
philosophy statement.
Yeah.
Right?
Personal philosophy
Yeah, you're-
statement right there.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
Was it?
I got this. Yeah. Did you feel like the silence?
Yeah.
Because my brain was thinking.
Yeah.
I've also had to practice talking slower, so that might be the reason why.
I feel like though, based off of this podcast, I mean, you've taken a bet on yourself multiple times over and over and over again. It was great to have you on this podcast.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
guys. It
much.
was an honor to be here. And I just, before we close out, I was saying it before we went live with the mics, but I am unbelievably proud of you guys. This is just the greatest thing I saw when it was launched. And I was so glad to see you guys doing this and promoting not only your own voices, but other women's voices and athletes' voices in general. This is what we need more than anything else. So I just want to say I know it maybe doesn't mean as much coming from me, but I'm very proud of you guys. And this is really quite incredible.
No, it does mean a lot. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Thank you.
Asante means thank you in Swahili.
Nice.
Anyways.
Mulțumesc in Romanian. So there you go.
There we go.
And Spanish.
Gracias.
That's an easy one. Oh my God,
And
though.
Thank you.
And this is the Bet on Her podcast.
And cut.
Great job, everybody.
Nice.